Hi, and welcome to another presentation from your business tutor, learning your way, anytime, anywhere. Before a business can sell anything, it must have something to sell. This is why today's presentation on methods of production is so important, as it will look at different ways in which a business can make the products it wants to sell. Okay, so what are we going to learn in this presentation? Well, first of all, we're going to find out about the different methods of production. Then we're going to investigate the advantages and disadvantages of each method of production. And then finally, we're going to explore the factors that influence the choice of production method. Okay, let's get started by asking, what is production? Production describes the process of making or manufacturing a product using a range of raw materials and components. This is an interesting concept as it tells us that organisations involved in production take raw materials which don't have much use and combine and convert them into something that consumers want. For example, individually the components that make up our mobile phone are of little use to us, but when combined and manufactured into a finished product, their value increases substantially. What this demonstrates is that production is essential to the making of goods, but also the generation of profit and wealth by adding value through the chain of production. Okay, let's now move on to look at the role of machines and workers in production by first asking, what is capital-intensive production? Capital-intensive production occurs when products are made using mainly machines and equipment. For example, items such as cars and soft drinks are mass-produced in huge factories using capital-intensive production. But equally, one-off projects such as building a bridge or a hospital would involve a significant amount of machinery and equipment as well. In general, there are two main ways in which capital-intensive production can occur. First, there is mechanisation, which is when the machines and equipment used in production are controlled by workers. For example, in clothing factories, people will be involved in using sewing machines to make garments. And second, there is automation, which is when computer software controls the robots, machines and equipment used in production, meaning workers are eliminated from the process as much as possible. For example, in many food manufacturing factories, the whole process of making and packaging a product is completely automated, with workers only in charge of supervising machines to make sure they are operating effectively. In fact, when this occurs, it is also referred to as computer-aided manufacturing, or CAM for short. The big advantage of using capital-intensive production is that it can result in huge productivity gains for a business. This is especially the case for factories where processes have been fully automated, because in such circumstances, machines will not only be able to work 24/7 and very quickly, but also will make no mistakes as they just repeat the same task over and over. What this means is that output will be greater, meaning it will be easy to deal with high levels of demand, but equally wastage levels will be lower, which overall should help reduce costs. In fact, even in a factory which is only mechanised, introducing machinery can improve productivity as it allows employees to complete tasks more quickly and often in a safer way. This last point is very important as the introduction of machinery can result in workers being removed from tasks which are dangerous and could cause injuries, which clearly will improve health and safety within a business. More than that though, using robots in an automated factory allows tasks to be undertaken that employees would not be able to do, such as working in extremely high or low temperatures. In fact, this goes even further, as robots and machines can operate in protected environments, such as in the pharmaceutical industry, meaning there is much less chance of bacterial contamination than if humans were involved. What this all means is that machines and robots allow tasks to be completed that previously may have been impossible, and that these can be done in a safe way to a high standard. Of course, being able to complete work to a high standard or quality is another advantage of capital-intensive production. in that as machines, especially those that are automated, are able to carry out the same task repetitively without making any mistakes, the quality of the finished product won't just be high, but also will be of a consistent standard. And finally, by introducing more machinery into the productive process, it allows a business to replace a significant number of its employees, which could dramatically reduce its costs. However, as beneficial as capital-intensive production can be, it needs to be remembered that there are issues. For example, one of the big problems is the cost of purchasing machinery and equipment, especially as the cost of doing this has to be paid up front. Nevertheless, even if the initial upfront cost can be afforded, a business will still have to meet the ongoing maintenance costs associated with operating machinery so that it continues to work properly and not cause any damage to the product being made. However, even when machinery is regularly maintained, it can still break down, which creates huge problems as production would have to stop, meaning output levels would be severely affected, which could cause shortages in shops. Another problem with capital-intensive production, and this is particularly the case with automation, is that it is only really good for producing standardised products. This means that products that require creativity or personalisation aren't really suitable for mechanised or automated production. And finally, introducing machinery into a factory could have negative consequences for staff, in that employees may lose their jobs, but also those staff that remain may be left with jobs that are boring and demotivating as they are just supervising the operations of a machine. Okay, let's turn to look at what labour-intensive production is. Labour-intensive production occurs when products are made using mainly employees and workers, and would include such things as works of art, carpentry and hairdressing. One of the big advantages of this type of production is that employees are incredibly adaptable, especially compared to machines. This is so important because this means they can be trained to carry out new tasks, which can increase productivity. But also, it means employees are far more able to personalise a product for a customer, which improves service. However, employees are even more useful than that because, unlike machines, they have the capacity to be creative when making something, which means a higher price can be charged for a product. More than that though, employee creativity and innovation can also result in better and more efficient methods being identified to make products, which increases productivity and output. And of course, as employees are self-aware, it means they are much better able to quality assure work than a machine would be, meaning errors may be identified more quickly, thus reducing waste. However, although using employees in production can be very cheap, especially in developing countries where many multinationals set up, it does need to be remembered that labour-intensive production does come with some problems. First, if an employee does not like the job they are doing, they may suffer from demotivation, meaning their output will be lower, and so may the quality of their work. And equally, although many employees may work hard, there is no getting away from the fact that staff need breaks and rests and can be off sick, which all negatively affect output levels. Moreover, although employees are able to do repetitive work, it is unlikely that they will be able to complete it exactly the same way every time, meaning there will be some variation in the quality of their work, which customers may not be very happy about. In fact, it may also be the case that if an employee is near the end of a shift or just newly trained, that mistakes creep into their work as well, meaning wastage levels will be high, which increases costs. And of course, employing lots of staff is expensive, not just because wages need to be paid, but also in terms of the cost of recruiting, selecting and training them as well. Okay, let's now turn to look at the factors that influence the choice of production method. One of the most influential factors is the type of product being made. For For example, if the item being made is a one-off, labour-intensive production will be necessary. Whereas if an identical product is to be manufactured, capital-intensive methods would be more suitable. Unless, of course, the level of demand for the item is low, meaning a huge investment in machinery would not be worth it. Nevertheless, even if demand for a product is high, a business will still need to consider if there is the machinery and technology in place to introduce capital-intensive methods, as without it, it would be impossible to do. Further still, even if the technology does exist, a business will also have to calculate if it can afford the initial investment required to purchase it, especially if labour costs are low and the product could be made by people instead. However, the choice between a more capital or labour-intensive approach is not just influenced by cost issues, but also by customer preference. In so much that if customers want a personalised product that is made to their specific requirements, using employees would probably be the best option, as they find it easier to adapt products to a customer's needs. On the other hand, if production occurs in a dangerous environment, it may be necessary to take a capital-intensive approach, as using employees in such an environment would be dangerous and result in huge health and safety concerns. And finally, sometimes the choice of production method is influenced by the effect it could have on industrial relations. For example, if becoming more capital intensive resulted in high levels of job losses, a business may be put off as it could result in disruptive industrial action. Okay, so what did we learn in this presentation? Well, first of all, we found out about the different methods of production. Then we went on to investigate the advantages and disadvantages of each method of production. And then finally, we explored the factors that influence the choice of production method. The difference between capital and labour-intensive production is stark. As such, it was seen that deciding which one to use would be fairly simple. However, as is so often the case in business, the answer is never so straightforward, in that many businesses will use a mixed approach where both methods are used in different parts of the organisation where appropriate.